UFC 272. DraftKings has released the salary so we could take our first look. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Last week we were perfect. We went 11 for 11 with our picks. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the final picks video from last week where I call literally every winner. That's rare in this game, but you know on this channel we've been winning consistently. It was only a matter of time. One of my best friends won an 11-leg parlay, won nearly $18,000. A lot of you sent me screenshots of you taking down first in your contest. I took down first in my contest. We had a lot of fun and I appreciate the support. And one thing that I ask of you guys this time, you don't need to like, you don't need to subscribe, but I know you watch a lot of different takes out there. Just let the bigger channels know I'm coming. Now, this is the first look. We go over the slate fighter by fighter, salary by salary. Starting at the top of the slate, we have Umar Nurmagomedov coming in at 9,600. He's fighting Brian Kelleher this week. He's the biggest favorite on the card. Money has been pouring in on him, and he looks like he's probably going to get a submission in this spot. The game plan is simple for Nurmagomedov. I'm going to take this guy down and make him tap. We saw him do that against a very solid Sergey Morozov in his debut, and I don't expect Brian Kelleher to really be able to stop the takedowns or hang with the wrestling of Nurmagomedov in this fight. And most of Kelleher's losses are by submission. And if you want to look at a recent matchup that I think can give us an idea of what we should expect, you can look at his fight with Ricky Simón. Ricky Simón was able to take him down 6 times, control him for nearly the entire fight. Umar Nurmagomedov is going to have his way with the grappling in this fight, and at 9,600, he is pricey, but we could end up getting here. The pick for me is Umar Nurmagomedov by submission. Next at 9,400, we have Colby Covington. He's fighting Jorge Masvidal, and it's hard to not like Nerd Bash this week. I expect him to come in at very, very high ownership, being the big favorite, being the main event, but it is worth it. Colby Covington just drowns people when you look at the amount of takedowns, control time, strikes. He's regularly posting scores unlike anybody else in the UFC. And if you take away his fights with Kamaru Usman, he's one of the most dominant welterweights we've ever seen. I think he ragdolls Masvidal in this spot. I don't think that Masvidal is going to be able to stop the takedowns, but what I will say is I think Masvidal is going to be able to work back to his feet effectively, but that's where Covington's going to be able to drag him back down, and the DraftKings points for takedowns are going to go up and up and up. I also, for what it's worth, think that Masvidal is a better striker, and for that reason I think that Colby Covington is going to spend as little time outside the clinch as possible. He stayed at range in his fights against Kamaru Usman, but that's because Kamaru Usman is next to impossible to take down. But I think we should expect a grueling, grinding, wrestling-heavy attack from Covington this weekend. I think he really drains Jorge Masvidal and picks up the W in this spot. So the pick for me is Colby Covington by decision, but high ceiling because of the 25 minutes to work with. So I think he's a must play this week. Next at 9,300, we have Marina Rodriguez. She's fighting Xiaonan this week, and I think she gets the W in this spot. Rodriguez has been on a tear since the start of last year. She knocked out Amanda Ribas, gets the 2 solid wins over Mackenzie Dern and Michelle Waterson. And in these fights, she just showed that her kickboxing was on another level and threw a ton of strikes. She has good cardio to keep up this pace as well, so there's a lot to like about Marina Rodriguez in this fight. She's going to have the slight height and reach advantage over Jan in this spot, and I expect her to just pick her apart from the outside and earn a decision win. And as a straight bet, I consider her a lock, but for DraftKings, I think you can safely avoid this fight. Rodriguez is going to win, but she's not looking to get this fight to the ground, and if she's not finding the knockout inside the first round, she's probably not viable at this price, at this 9,300. And if you've been watching, you know that we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. If you're up at this price range and you don't have that kind of ceiling, there's finishing upside all over the card, so you don't need to get here. I expect 70 to 80 points in a solid effort from Marina Rodriguez. The pick for me is a decision win for her, but I won't be getting there on DraftKings. At 9,100, we have Kevin Holland. He's fighting Cowboy Oliveira this week. Kevin Holland should be a popular play this week. He normally is. This fight for me is less about liking Kevin Holland and more about not liking Cowboy Oliveira, though. Oliveira fights at a painfully slow pace nowadays. He's very hittable. His cardio is bad. He's 2-6 in his last 8 fights, and there's no real clear path to victory for him in this spot. Kevin Holland, on the other hand, he's going to have a 4-inch height advantage, nearly a 5-inch reach advantage. We know that he could crack, and he should have no problem finding the mark this week. The only concern that I have with him is his limited upside on DraftKings. And the reason why I say that is because Oliveira does fight at a slower pace, and he gets his opponents to do the same thing. And Oliveira may have success in moments just controlling the pace of the fight by getting the clinch up against the fence. He's pretty washed, but he's also tricky enough on the ground to maybe find himself in a dominant position temporarily during a scramble. And if these are things that are happening each round and this fight goes to decision, at 9,100, everybody's going to be on Kevin Holland, and he's only going to score around 70 to 80 points. This is a similar situation to Marina Rodriguez. This is a situation where you have fighters that might go over-owned, and they probably shouldn't because their finishing upside is lower than what you would hope for above 9,000. So the pick for me is Kevin Holland. I'm actually going to say by decision with a ton of ownership, and we'll probably get a little deeper on that on the final picks video later in the week. Next at 9,000, we have Tagir Ulanbekov. He's fighting Tim Elliott, and this looks like one of those spots already early in the week. This looks like a spot where Tagir Ulanbekov goes way under-owned and posts a good DraftKings score. With Nurmagomedov, Covington, Holland all priced above 9,000, Tagir Ulanbekov should see very little ownership in most of your contests. And he should be able to take Tim Elliott down at will and possibly find a submission. In his last fight, he was able to get Alan Nascimento down each round, but he really didn't do much from a dominant position. Now keep in mind, Nascimento's a 5'9" flyweight and a big submission threat. Tim Elliott doesn't present the same degree of danger for Ulanbekov. So if we get the takedowns, we get the control time, and we see Tagir more active in dominant positions, then we should have a solid leverage play on our hands at a decent price. The pick for me is Tagir Ulanbekov. I actually believe he finishes this fight. I'm going Tagir Ulanbekov by submission. At 8,900, rest in peace to what would have been a really fun co-main event. Moving on at 8,800, we have Mariya Agapova. Mariya Agapova should get the finish in this spot. She fights like a wild animal. She throws crazy strikes on the feet, fights hard for submissions on the ground. She gassed out against Shayna Dobson, where she was a minus 1,400 favorite, and she was ultimately finished, but outside of that, she's been perfect in Invicta and in the UFC. Moroz hasn't seen action in 2 years, but has been scheduled to fight. She's pulled out of 4 fights in the last 2 years, so it's hard to think of what kind of shape she's coming into this fight in, but even at her fighting best, I still think Agapova would dominate. And at this price, I do expect a lot of people to get here, which is another reason we're probably going to be playing Tagir Ulanbekov. I expect high ownership here, but it's probably worth it. There's more finishing upside, better matchup than a lot of the options that are priced higher than she is. So the pick for me is Mariya Agapova by submission. At 8,700, Sergey Spivak. He's fighting Greg Hardy this week. I don't expect this fight to go the distance, and I think you're probably going to need one side of this on DraftKings. If Spivak wins, it's probably a finish on the ground, and if Hardy wins, it's probably an early knockout. And early in the week, I'm going to lean toward Greg Hardy in this spot. Hardy is going to be the bigger fighter. He's going to have a few inches in height, a few inches in reach, and he also weighs in right at the heavyweight limit. Sergey Spivak normally weighs in at around 235, 240. In Spivak's last fight, he did virtually nothing against Tom Aspinall, and it's hard to back him now with any kind of confidence. I think Hardy can land early, I think he can land often, and I think he could find the finish in the first round that we are all hoping for. Because everybody loves Greg Hardy, right? No? Okay. Well, for me, the pick is Greg Hardy by knockout. Next at 8,600, we have Dustin Jacoby. He's going to be fighting Michal Oleksiejczuk this week. This is a really solid fight. This is a good fight to watch. I think that it's going to be close one way or the other. Neither of these guys really looking to get the fight to the ground. They both have 2 takedowns total in their UFC careers. So this is basically a kickboxing match, and it's hard to not want to choose the kickboxer in this fight. So I expect Dustin Jacoby to be a bit more technically sound, control the pace of the fight, maybe have the speed advantage. He is going to be the slightly longer fighter. I do think the power advantage lies on the side of Oleksiejczuk, and I think that power causes Jacoby to be cautious for a lot of the fight. Cautious about staying in striking range and entering the pocket. So I expect a lot of footwork and leg kicks from Jacoby in this fight. And if that's how the fight plays out, then Dustin Jacoby likely wins, but he's going to score a sad 60 points on DraftKings. And I really don't see much value on the underdog here in Oleksiejczuk unless he goes out there and scores a big knockout, but I don't think he's going to do that against somebody with the striking caliber of Dustin Jacoby. So give me Dustin Jacoby, my decision in this fight, but from DraftKings perspective, I'm probably staying away. Next to 8,400 in the battle of last names, we have Kennedy Nzechukwu. He's fighting Negumereanu this week. I picked Nzechukwu in his last fight against Da Un Jung, expecting him to find the knockout. Instead, he got an elbow to the forearm, and that was it. I don't know what that was about. I want the Nzechukwu that finished Danilo Marquez late. I want the Nzechukwu that was able to take a lot of damage from Carlos Ulberg and then finally find the knockout. And he has all the tools to put Negumereanu away. Big power in both hands, 5-inch height advantage, 5-inch reach advantage. Negumereanu has wins over guys like Ike Villanueva and Alexa Kamer, but this is a sizable step up in competition for him. Kennedy Nzechukwu, still very young, has done a lot of his learning on the job. Half of his career fights have been in the UFC. I honestly don't love his output, but Negumereanu should be there to be hit, and if Kennedy lands, then he's probably going to put him out. I just expect Nzechukwu to look like the veteran in this spot. I think Negumereanu is still a little bit green. I think that we're going to see a lot of footwork out of Kennedy Nzechukwu in this spot, and I think he's going to find the shot that ends the night. So the pick for me is Kennedy Nzechukwu by knockout. If you've gotten to this point in the video and you're thinking, so you've picked one underdog? Yes, I have. I was really banking on Dos Anjos. I didn't expect the fight to fall through. He was the underdog that was making everything work. Because when we go to 8,300, Bryce Mitchell is fighting Edson Barboza, and I expect Bryce Mitchell to get the job done. This is a classic striker versus grappler matchup, so of course we're taking the grappler. He's going to be a popular play at this price, and you know what you're getting from him. He wants to take Edson down. He wants to stay on top. I could see him getting the submission in this spot. We have seen Edson Barboza submitted in the past, and we've seen him dominated by strong wrestling as well. Of course, the worry is that he's too dynamic on the feet and he's able to knock Mitchell out, but I don't see that happening. What I can see is Edson Barboza fighting hard for all 3 rounds and continuing to get back up to his feet, where Bryce Mitchell is going to be able to start racking up DraftKings points from the volume takedowns. So I really like Bryce Mitchell this week from a DraftKings perspective, and at 8,300, very, very good value here. At 8,200, we have Jalen Turner. He's fighting Jamie Mullarkey this week. This fight should be an important one on DraftKings, just because a lot of these underdog options don't look good. It's not like last week where there were a lot of underdog options that we thought were viable. This week, the underdog options don't look great, so you're going to need to play this fight just from a salary relief perspective. And both these fighters actually have a lot of good value built into their price because of the finishing upside. But I actually think Jalen Turner gets the job done in this spot. Jamie Mullarkey knocked out the very chinny Kama Worthy, and he finished Devontae Smith. Those are both solid wins, but what gives me pause is when you look at his fight with Faraz Ziam. I think that the long, rangy Jalen Turner is going to give him a lot of trouble in this matchup. And I think those long limbs are going to make it especially difficult for Mullarkey to find a takedown in this spot. And if he shoots lazily at any point, Turner is opportunistic. He's going to snatch something up. Jalen Turner still very young, still learning in this game, extremely big for the division, and very athletic. All these things make me like him this week. I think he gets the job done, and I actually think that he gets a submission in this spot. Now I'm going to save building lineups for the final picks video, but we will take a look at these plays below 8,000. There is a good amount of value here on Jamie Mullarkey. He has a decent matchup, a lot of momentum, finishing upside. I could see people getting here at 8,000 and it making a lot of sense. Edson Barboza is going to have the striking advantage, and he's extremely tough with decent cardio, so he's not going to stop fighting. And from a striking perspective, there are a lot of question marks with Bryce Mitchell, so at 7,900, Edson Barboza doesn't look bad. Negumereanu, you hope that he gets the takedowns, but I think it's going to be difficult for him to take him down. I'm not really too interested in playing him against the African Savage this week. Michal Oleksiejczuk, there's finishing upside, and Dustin Jacoby, there isn't a whole lot of finishing upside, so if Oleksiejczuk is aggressive and fights like he did in his last fight against Gazmatov, then he might be able to just overwhelm Jacoby and find the knockout. I don't think that it's going to happen. I think Jacoby wins a low-scoring decision, but if you are to target that fight, I would tell you to go this way. Greg Hardy, really one of the only underdogs that I feel good about. I think that he gets the win in this spot. I think he just needs to sit down on his punches early, believe in the strikes, throw things straight down the middle, and he'll find the chin of Sergey Spivak at some point. Marina Moroz, what you do like about her is that she's very tough. So if she can survive, again, we have seen Agapova gas out in the past. If she's throwing over 170 strikes like she did in her last fight, and she's able to go the whole 15 minutes at a good pace, she could take over late and find a finish at that point. So I think my mind may change on this one. I think this is actually going to be one of the better looking dog options on this slate. And I do expect her to come in at lower ownership and probably end up being a good leverage play considering how many people are going to be playing Agapova. This one we'll keep our eyes on. Rafael, please don't take the Islam fight. If they let you fight anybody else, then we'll have some value down here at 7,300. Please. Tim Elliott, this week's Yoel Alvarez. Listen, if you watch some of these bigger channels and they told you to play Yoel Alvarez, just know they did that. I don't expect Tim Elliott to win this week. I think that he's really going to struggle to stay on his feet. I think he's going to struggle to fight off submissions once it gets to the ground. I don't like Tim Elliott, and I hear him getting a lot of love this week. I think it's a trap. Cowboy Oliveira, too low of output. Kevin Holland is tall and long for the weight class. I don't like it. Xiaonan, kind of like Marina Moroz, she's going to throw a lot of strikes. She's going to go in there banging with Marina Rodriguez. And if this fight sees the judges' scorecards with the way that scoring is, anything could happen. She could easily find herself getting her hand raised if she's landing over 100 strikes. Street Judas, I'm not really interested this week. I think he's going to get dragged into some deep water. I don't think Jorge Masvidal is very valuable at 6,800. Brian Kelleher, it would be nice if he was able to like wrap up a guillotine or something like that, but I really just don't see a low percentage choke working against somebody like Nurmagomedov this week. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let those bigger channels know when it's coming and new.